Hi, so my name is Gilbert Bollinger. I'm here to speak with you about defending space through cyberspace, and specifically around time. And so I think time is something we all take for granted, and we'll see how much time can impact just the internet, space, communications, and other things in our environments. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the technology industry now for 29 years. I have spent part of my career in the private sector, some of it in the public sector. And when I joined the public sector, I joined DoD in 2001, shortly before the Second Gulf War, and joined an agency there and became very familiar with defensive countermeasures such as DISA-STIGs, and also helped establish the Network Operations Security Center for the agency that I was working at. I later left and went to Cisco Systems for 11 and a half years as a solutions architect, where I won an award for SIG automation at Cisco. After that, I left Cisco and founded a company called Squirrel Compliancy Solutions, where we kind of focus on trying to help customers kind of focus on their mission versus the administrative task and that is involved in achieving compliance. Because compliance is nothing if you don't have a secure network and meeting your mission needs. Now, some of the things that we're going to look at here is what we do in space. So historically, space has been an environment that I would say, I'm jumping through here, is an environment that we leverage for information. Now, more and more of our space-based platforms are critical to everything that we're doing in the military. And they're providing information to a warfighter that is up front on a tablet, receiving information. And so these systems are now part of our daily lives. The information is not optional to have. The commander or the platoon needs to have that information. A weapon system to hit a target needs to have information from the satellite systems or a GPS in some cases to meet the target and hit the destination at once. And within time will impact all of these things. And I think time is something, again, we take all for granted, whether it's when we look at our watch, looking at our phone, or looking at the wall, we think time is pretty reliable. And when time is not reliable, a lot of bad things happen. So I'm going to go over a few things here during this talk. So we're going to talk about some recent security events, some things that are real world that have happened out there that, that are not hypotheticals. They're not these kind of things that could happen. These are things that actually have happened. And then some of the security measures that we have implemented in all of our environments, hopefully, right, to protect ourselves from some of these threats and some of these issues that we see. And then how does zero trust from a DoD perspective kind of play into some of those things that we need to be doing from a defensive security posture perspective. Now, when we look at space, we look at various segments within the space area. And we're looking from the user segment, the command sector, the transport segment, the space segment, and time is pretty important. So if an application is not working properly, this can have a significant impact. And we'll see examples here where people jammed GPS. They manipulate GPS's signals, and we lose synchronization with time when that happens. You don't want ships going in the wrong place. You don't want mission not being able to be capable because of time is being jammed or being spoofed or other things. Now, when we lose synchronization across the satellite systems, time is important, particularly up there with things moving so quickly, and us to get the information we need down here on the ground. And so we're going to kind of touch on some of those topics and kind of focus where, what do we think time is? Now, when we look here, we see adversaries can use time. Simple NTP, if you're not protecting it, it's on virtually everything we use, from our laptops that are synchronizing time up to whatever NTP server you're using. If you don't have this protected, it literally will show you the operating system, the version of the operating system, the patch level, and if an adversary is doing reconnaissance and they're able to see that, that means they're able to go to their playbook and have targeted attacks in your environment. And so that's going to lead us to issues where national security could be at risk, because we do not want any of these systems to start breaking down at the wrong time and the wrong place. So these are some of the real-world examples that I was kind of referring to. So we have the GNSS jamming that occurred in the Ukraine. We saw solar winds where timestamps and some of the log files and some of the information was being delayed. It started delaying the incident response. And then we saw GPS spoofing, and we don't want in 2019, and we don't want that to happen because we don't want ships and things going in the wrong places. Some other examples of that would be Cloudflare in 2019 had a time synchronization error that took down part of their environment, caused an internet outage globally. So time synchronization caused an internet outage. Now think about what if that was the NIPRNet or something, and all the things that reside in NIPRNet were stacked on top of NIPRNet, and we had time synchronization error that occurred there. And it's even more sensitive because of the encryption that we're using to protect the NIPRNet. And then the other example would be the Ukrainian oil pipeline, or the oil refinery attack that occurred. Good for us, probably bad for them. And what happened there is timestamps were being manipulated again. It took them a very, very long time to figure out what was going on because they couldn't match anything up and correlate anything. And the recovery of that environment took an extended period of time. So these are real-world examples that happen to other people. Let's make sure that it doesn't happen to any of us. So some of the main benefits here is that, in the olden days when we looked at a lot of the things that were going up in space, it was just us and the Soviets. So 2 people. Now we have every Tom, Dick, and Harry up there, and private industry. So we have, so that's a very crowded space that we have now. And in the olden days, when we sent something up, it was all, GOTS, government software, government equipment, and we probably didn't think anyone was going to mess with it. Now, when we send things up, it's a mixture between GOTS and COTS. And if you notice on Monday, Apple released a security update. All that COTS software and hardware have vulnerabilities that are being continuously announced. And so it's really important to stay on top of those things, even if they're in space, or in some of the ground segments that are communicating and part of that life cycle, part of the whole space domain. And so it's critical that we leverage these things and keep an eye on them. Now, defensive countermeasures can be used to kind of help control those things, and those are things we know what to do. It's not rocket science. But there's a lot of things to touch, a lot of things to review, a lot of places to kind of dot the I, cross the T. And the reality is we all ask to do more with less, and so sometimes those things don't get done. And when those things don't get done, we leave little holes for people to jump through or wiggle their way through. Typically the people we don't want to have wiggle their way through. And when this stuff starts affecting the space domain, whatever segment you're dealing with, you're talking about time drift, you're talking about trajectories of satellites where they think it's a certain time when it's not that time, and they're making maneuvers or looking to take a picture or whatever it is. You want them doing the right things at the right time. And if you're looking at on the transport segment, you want to make sure you're using encryption. Encryption is very time sensitive and time synchronization. And if you're looking at the user segment and the user command segment, you need to maintain the integrity of that. Time is critical for that because all the synchronization, all of the encryption, and the timing of the information that's being received. Just like the Ukrainians. We don't want to be looking at things thinking it's happening at a different time than what it really is, because that makes us question, what are we receiving? Is it what I need to be receiving? And that breaks things down pretty quickly. Now, sorry, I should have brought that up for you while I was going through it. So these are some of the segments that we're kind of like talking about. And so these are just a few of them. It's not even all the various segments within the space domain. And if you look at some of the NIST documentations that kind of reference a lot of these different segments, there's a lot of moving parts in every domain. And the main thing is, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're providing a capability to a user. And what that user is doing with it is to meet their mission. And if they can't get the information that they need from the systems that's supposed to be providing it, we have a problem. And in this environment, timing becomes more and more important. Now, when we talk about IP, let's talk about Starlink. Starlink doesn't use IP to transfer information. They use IP for management purposes and management purposes only. And so even there, we're going to see situations where if we're using private industry for certain things, as we move forward, it looks like, we have the, space, we have different companies taking things up to space for us now versus NASA doing it predominantly. And so all these things have moving parts, and the risk factors for all of them need to be taken care of and reviewed appropriately. So let's go in kind of like look at something that I'm very familiar with or have been doing for 20-something years, hardening things that need to be fit in customer environments, STIGs, or defensive countermeasures. So this is really critical because if you look at Zero Trust 7, we need to have a policy, and we need to have an enforcement point. We know the policies. We have CORAs, we have CCRIs that tell us what the policies are supposed to be. We have enforcement points. The problem is, with defensive security posture, the enforcement point is usually some guy sitting in a chair or gal sitting in a chair behind a keyboard doing it all manually, creating lots of issues and lots of gaps in the process because it's a very tedious and time-consuming process. We should also be seeing these things in real time. Vulnerabilities, whether in the space domain or otherwise, should not be lingering for a prolonged period of time. So real-time visibility into these things in reducing the length of time for mitigation, detection and mitigation is critical. We are running in environments where mitigation never happens because of manpower, because people are doing things manually. And we're doing this in an environment where people are rotating in and out. Contractors leave, government employees retire, or doing other things, taking early buyouts. And so this is situations that are real. And this situation that we're talking about exists in every part of the Department of Defense that uses any type of technology. So I'm going to speed up here a little bit for you. So the war domain, let's start up here. Space domain. This is a war-fighting domain. This is critical to everything that we're doing these days. The information that we get and all the segments that we just previously talked about need to be protected, and time has to be ensured. Now, one of the things that we see here is, I would say, as a country, the Department of Defense, we do a pretty damn good job being offense, right? We have a lot of tools in our tool belt that we can use to inflict pain if we need to. But we use automation offensively. And unfortunately, our adversaries use automation offensively from a technology perspective. We don't use automation in every place we should be using it. And that's creating opportunities for those adversaries. So maintaining operational capability is critical. And addressing those vulnerabilities and stopping these things from happening should be one of our main priorities. Because if we have these vulnerabilities lingering, someone's going to use them, and they're going to use them when we don't want to. And yes, we probably have the capability of recovering those systems, but what are they doing when we're doing the recovery process? What are we blind to? What effect are we giving them, or advantage? If you look at the Super Bowl, it was kind of a sad game to watch. Someone got slaughtered, and I think the one thing that's pretty clear there is that the Eagles had something that the Chiefs didn't. They had both a great offense and a great defense. Mahone got sacked endlessly in that game. You kind of felt sorry for him after a while. So I think in the modern world, we're all connected. There is no Customs and Border Patrol asking for visa access when someone's communicating on the internet. And if any of these systems have IP and are connected to a DoD network, I would assure you that somewhere, someplace, people were on there that shouldn't be on there, unfortunately. So ensuring mission readiness means that we need to make sure those doors are closed hard, the windows are locked, and we're doing all the preventative things that we need to be doing, because the recovery process can be quite time-consuming at times. So this is a very kind of more of a discussion point here for you guys. We kind of go through. Securing space through cyberspace starts with vulnerabilities. Starts with addressing vulnerabilities. Would you say, on the first one, that we've done a good job over the last 24 years addressing vulnerabilities, and that the way we've been doing it for the last 24 years is the way we should continue doing it, because we've done a great job at doing it? I probably would say no. And that probably should keep you up at night. It should probably aggravate you a little bit, and because we should have learned some lessons along those 24 years instead of making the same mistake over and over, expecting a different result. The next thing is, if the space domain is compromised, what good is it to the warfighter? It's not good enough. It provides zero value because the integrity is lost. And if we allow these vulnerabilities to proliferate like we have, then the space domain is going to be susceptible to attacks. I mean, I was mentioning earlier, like, a lot of people are up there. China has a brand new space station sitting up there. We have the old ISS that's getting ready to fall apart and fall on Earth. They're putting things up there all the time. Probably things that maybe could be offensively used against our own satellites that we have up there. So this is critical to make sure that we protect these systems as much as possible. You can't mitigate every risk, but you should try. STIGs, I'll say something nice about DISA. They gave us this. If you look at every other industry that exists in the United States, you look at PCI DSS, NERC CIP, financial regulations, they give you this really broad perspective of what you should do to secure environments. They make phrases, ye shall use an appropriate level of cryptography. What does that mean? We have NIST and we have DISA telling us exactly prescriptive what to do. These things can be applied across the board to many different things than what we think they can be today. The space domain is one of those things. We don't need to recreate the wheel. We have a playbook. We need to find a better way of executing the playbook or the policy and have a better enforcement point for those policies so that way we secure space. Now, that builds into zero trust. Again, we need to have a policy decision point and an enforcement point. The policy that we want to implement, the defensive countermeasures. Because we know, again, our adversaries are using automation for offensive purposes against us. And they're going to leverage all these little cracks that we leave open for them. We have ways of closing those doors. We have ways of using automation to close these doors. And one of the things that kind of like really kind of frustrates me is this. We need to ensure that we embrace automation. Why haven't we ever leveraged automation for defensive countermeasures? Why are we doing it by hand? Why are we doing all of this by hand? Why are we leaving all these vulnerabilities lingering out there, sometimes for years? It's because we're doing it the old-fashioned way. We think it's 1999, and we're going to get on a keyboard and go fix it. When in fact, how big is everyone's networks? How many assets? How many touch points? How many parts and pieces need to be secured? We're going to try and do that by hand. And we have cores coming out, and we expect that the same 5 guys or gals are going to do those things, and we're going to say, okay, now apply those things to space. And if you screw it up and we lose access to something in space, you're in trouble. These things require a very delicate touch, a very surgical approach. And automation can help illuminate and inform the warfighter or that staff sergeant that's sitting there doing these things, or the warrant officer. So leverage automation. You're not getting any more people. And the last thing I heard on the news is this new agency within the government now called that looks for efficiency purposes. And we're all seeing on the news, efficiency is key. We're going to be doing more with less. Budgets are going to be slashed probably, right? So we need to make sure that we have the capability to maintain our operations with less staff and better visibility and better countermeasures. Invest in modern solutions. Now, that's not rocket science. Now, when I see this slide here, this point, people are going to think, oh, wow, what's the next whiz-bang thing that I need to go buy? This AI term, this and that. What we need to really focus on is fundamentals. STIGs are fundamentals. You tell me you're going to layer AI and all this on top of an environment that is wide open, that has endless amounts of vulnerabilities, and you think it's going to get better? We need to deal with the nuts and bolts of the network and of the systems that are used in the environments to protect them. Now, this is leveraging pragmatic, common sense things, right? You don't build a house on a bad foundation. You build it on a solid foundation. This is the basics. This is the foundation. And you need to look for things that help reinforce that foundation in the right way. And again, we've all invested in SIMs, event management tools. The reason why they're going off all the time and no one ignores them and the value proposition that they were supposed to give us isn't there It's because things like this isn't done. So much is getting through. There's no block and tackling. Nothing getting funneled down, so there's less coming down to the SIMs. So where do we need to have SIMs? We need to have SIMs in a lot of places. But there's so much noise. It's the boy who cried wolf over and over. And no one ever looks at these tools because we're not blocking, tackling. We don't have the defensive countermeasures in place. We're letting too much through all the time. And we don't need to do that. There's no reason to do it anymore. It is 2025 after all, not 1999. And this means collaboration has to happen. There's a lot of smart people in DoD, in the government in general. The problem is, even if all of them are geniuses, this problem can't be solved on the keyboard. It's just not going to happen. And we're still acting as like it's going to be, it's a problem. So I would say we're part of the DIB. So we're here to help. I think the DIB is here to collaborate, come up with practical, pragmatic solutions that fix real-world problems and not hypothetical things. And again, look at the foundation. Do we have a solid foundation in terms of a security posture? We don't. We have a lot of problems that need to be addressed and fixed. And then once we do that, we start layering on more and more of these advanced capabilities. We don't have to worry about them going down, not being accessible to the warfighter at the wrong time, at the wrong place. So that's the end. And since we have a Star Wars theme, it seems like around STIGs these days, punch it, Chewie. I guess that's what Han Solo says. So any questions? Sure.
Can you walk through some of your solutions?
In what case?
Your automation solutions. I understand the problem. What is your solution?
Yeah. So, try not to talk about, you want me to talk about my company or solution? Okay, all right. I was trying not to do a product pitch. So the main thing is that, look, there's a lot of STIGs, right? And there's STIGs applicable for databases, web front ends, applications, you name it, there's a STIG. If there's not a STIG, there's an SRG. SRGs are very high level and very difficult to read and interpret at times. So I'm an old GSer now, worked with the old JTF GNO stuff, if I want to date myself a little bit. And I'm the guy that got angry and quit his job and created a company to fix this problem. Wouldn't recommend it for anyone else. And so the problem with the STIGs is context, devil in the details, applicability, and knowing where to apply the STIGs, understand what use cases exist, when and where. That is hard. And then you have another problem with the STIGs is that they cover a broad swath of technologies, even just on the network layer. I'm a network engineer, right, and Unix admin. And so the problem is not everyone knows all these technologies. They can't answer things in an authoritative manner. And all the STIGs are repetitive. It's a prescriptive, right? And so you can automate that all day long, every day, because it's repeatable. And you can build a solution that is scalable and can be transferred from environment to environment within a quick amount of time. Like we do a deployment in 3 business days. Typically on the 3rd business days, our customers are doing remediation. Our platform supports remediation because you can't give people a report and say, you suck, here's 100,000 things you suck at, and by the way, I'm not going to give you any help. Go do it. You're not going to be able to do it because you don't have any more people, and it's just you, and you're probably going to go home and cry, because you don't want to do your job. And you're getting yelled at every day about why is your core and why are all these things, why are the findings always here? So automation is key because you have to show people where the problems are, have the fidelity and accuracy, the precision to do it, which not a lot of people can do. And then you also have to leverage that precision and accuracy to have automated remediation. So that way the operator can say, I'm going to fix these things. An example of that, we had a customer, 3rd day, remediate 35,000 findings in 18 minutes. So you have to have pragmatic solutions that fix real-world problems, not marketecture and people trying to sell you something with a little checkmark box saying, we do STIGs. Oh, we do an NDM STIG. Well, how many of those rules do you do in NDM STIG? There's 50 of them. Oh, we do 5. You're not really helping anyone. They're wasting your time and your money. So what percentage of the step policy do you support? Oh, and also, do you do remediation for me? Do you keep them up to date? What if I have a problem with them and I find I got a false positive, false negative? Do you fix that or do I fix that? Well, the talent at all these customer sites rotates in and out all the time. So every 2 years, you have a brain drain, and you have to rebuild. There's no continuity. So you have to build a platform that is maintainable, deployable, low administrative overhead, and can be there for the continuity. I did a little bit of a rant, but did I answer your question? All right. Yeah. So a lot of these tools you see out there, I made this kind of comment, oh, I support NDM, STIG, and I support 5 rules. When there's 50 rules, so where do you help? Curation's key. So you have Ansible, you have all of these do-it-yourself systems. You go into DevOps, you hire 5 contractors to help you with it, and guess what? It takes you how long to build all the automation to even get close to achieving the requirements of the STIG? So you have time you're losing. In addition to that, sustainment, if you lose any of those people. And so the problem is, how can you get something that doesn't add any more cost, administrative overhead into your environment? You have to have a curated solution. Like what we did was, we have smart people in the United States of America that write the rules and QA them. If our customers have problems, they open up a ticket up, we fix it. When DISA releases new SIGs, we update our automation and release it. We do monthly automation updates for them. Every month we get a package that we send out. Whether there's new SIGs, because we're adding new stuff all the time. Adding Juniper, adding Arista, adding Palo Alto, adding whatever it is. And so we have to continuously move that needle forward and cover more and more and more and more and more. And so that is critical, because the skill set it takes to and the patience, and my joke is, you have to have a little bit of OCD with a touch of Asperger's in order to do this stuff really, really well. And and if you don't have that what I just said, what happens is the devil's in the details. You don't do the QA, you don't think of all the different use cases, because STIGs only document 1 or 2 of the use cases you should check, but there's a million different ways you could deploy a piece of technology. You have to make sure the automation can adapt easily to those things. And that's a problem when you do DevOps. And you have a big team recreating the wheel every time and every command, doing all over and over and over again. And they're doing these DevOps because certain tools, I'm not going to name them by name, that DISA has pushed out to everyone, don't cut the mustard. And you're mandated to use them, but they aren't doing anything productive for you today. And that is, pretty frustrating for a guy like me who's an engineer, who had to go do STIGing, who then was 11 and a half years covering everyone in DoD, seeing all of them beat their head against the wall over and over and over again, and some of them really nice people, and just really frustrated. And the DoD is big enough. This shouldn't be this problem. And there's smart people in the world, much smarter than me, and if I'm able to do it, maybe they can too, or they just didn't have the willpower, the desire, or care enough. I look at it as a national security issue. What are we going to do when they come across the strait and go after Taiwan? And they start doing a cyber attack on us before they even do it, and start taking all of our stuff down, taking out electric in the U.S., power grids, natural gas. We don't have electric for the grocery store that's there. Now, they're going to turn around and do the same thing to the Department of Defense. Okay? And they're going to start taking stuff down. And yes, we'll be able to recover it and try to pull the pieces together, but what are they going to be able to get away with while that happens? What systems would we have leveraged from an offensive perspective that we can't because they're offline? Yep. So this is what kind of keeps me up at night. This is what made a crazy old engineer quit his job, create a company, and get a good team behind him. Again, did I answer your question? All right. Anyone else have any other questions? Sure.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you. So you say, I like your idea of things being automated. Mm-hmm. However, in the U.S. Navy, we deal with a lot of bandwidth issues where, destroyers have 5 megs to go over three network enclaves. How would you go about not doing the 1999 style of going up to a computer and keyboard and getting automation on ships?
Yeah, so if you have a 5 meg connection, I mean, I don't know how much that's being used at the time, so saturation of that link. First off is you're doing double encryption typically. So drop your MTU to 1280. So that way you're not doing fragmentation, so you don't have jitter loss and throughput problems. So like our platform, we drop the MTU out of the box when someone installs it. So that way if it's on the land and they're trying to hit it on something on sea, you have encryption, 2 levels of encryption, we don't care. And so that way you get better connection. We also, when we connect to your assets, we connect once, grab all the information that we want, we can audit your device in 23 seconds. We can audit 25,000 devices for all applicable STIGs in 1 hour and 20 minutes. And then we tell you, here's the report, what do you want to go fix? And we'll help you fix it. We just don't lob it over the fence and say, good luck with it. Now, I mean, I think in some cases, it may make sense to deploy something on a ship, depending on how much bandwidth is being consumed. And then that administrative overhead and that knowledge level of how to maintain and support those tools become even more. So it's good that you use a tool that was built by an engineer for other engineers, and knowing all the lessons learned about people being varying levels of skill sets, how to make sure it can work in an air-gapped environment, making sure all these things that DoD has that maybe other people don't have, and you have to pick the right tool for the problem, right? And make sure the tool is fit for use. A lot of companies out there don't do that. They make you do it the hard way, and when things don't work, it's your fault, or just deal with it. So that's not what we do. We partner with our customers because you lead from the top. You set expectation about what you want your engineers to do and how you want them to interact with their customers, and not nickel and dime them. But I mean, did that help? Yeah. So, but usually it's minimizing bandwidth as much as possible with the way the application is constructed, and making sure that you can do things fast and easy. A lot of tools log in and log out, log in, log out, log in, log out, and lock up the account. We log in once, do everything we need to do, and get out there. We do remediation. We log in once, run all the remediation, log out, go to the next device. Not log in, log out, log in, log out in your TACX or your ICE logs, and just fill it up and lock your accounts out. So, yep. Any other questions? So I think we're kind of at the time.
1 minute past.
1 minute past. Okay, I rambled for an extra minute. So if anyone wants to talk afterwards, I'm happy to talk. Pretty familiar with STIGs. If you have some that are bothering you, giving you nightmares, I'm happy to help you, kind of like maybe a counseling session.